Hello. I just wanted to go over a couple things before the video started. I found this weird rabbit hole with this silverware manufacturing company and its history as essentially the financial wing of a former cult. Well, the point of my video is I kind of want to showcase the weird history of it all without going super far in depth because I want to encourage people to look it up themselves and learn about it. Whoever watches this video, that is. I don't know. There might not be anybody watching the video, frankly, but I don't know. I thought it'd be a good premise for a video. This is my first time kind of doing something like this, so if you take the time out of your day to watch the video, or you put it on while cleaning or playing games or whatever, I would ask for you to possibly go to the comments and give me some feedback. That's the only way I can make these videos better.
Hey Douglas,
Yeah.
you know what really grinds my gears?
What grinds your gears, man?
Spoons. I don't like
Spoons.
them. I really don't like spoons because, like, why are they round? Like, they don't like. You'd think they need to be round to get their job done, but like, they really don't.
Yeah.
Because like, a lot of things you can eat with spoons, you can eat with forks, and like nobody nobody thinks that. But like, you might think to yourself, oh, what about like soups and like liquids and whatnot, dude? Dude, just drink it with your hands. Like, pick up the bowl and drink it, dude. At that point, you don't need a spoon. And like, back in the day, the spoons used to be flat, but
Hmm.
for some reason they changed that, and like, I don't get it because like it was fine the way it was before, but no, we need to change things needlessly because we need to set apart from this fork, because everything needs to be unique and special. I don't get these people. I don't get why they do that. Like, just spoons are
Yeah.
so dumb. I don't get it.
Have you heard of that cult that owns a spoon company?
No.
Really? So I first discovered this rabbit hole through Reddit, of all places. I found a post. It basically said, comment below the weirdest rabbit hole you've ever been down. And most of the comments were fairly like milk toast. They really had nothing. But I found one all the way at the bottom, and it said, the silverware company I go through is the money making arm of a cult. And that sent me down a huge rabbit hole. A piece of American history I had never even heard of until I saw that Reddit post. It's fairly interesting. I will say though, the comment was kind of facetious. I don't know if they were intentionally being facetious. The cult, quote unquote, does not exist anymore. The company exists, but the company's how do you say, like,
It started out as the money making arm
well,
of the cult.
it started out as the money making arm of the cult, but it's secular now. The company's secular now. It doesn't have hold religious beliefs, or at least inherently. So I guess I'll just kind of I wrote down a bunch of stuff, and I thought I would present it to you, Oliver, and the audience, possible audience. So
We'll
I guess
see.
I'll start it out. Our story starts with this boy being born by the name of John Humphrey Noyes. He was born on September the 3rd, 1811, in Battleboro, Vermont, to a woman named Polly Hayes Noyes, a devout Christian housemaker, and John Humphrey Noyes Sr., a more secular former teacher, as well as a mildly successful businessman. He was also in Congress, which is pretty interesting.
Of course, he was in Congress.
Yeah, so due to Little John's family status, adulthood, he graduated from the prestigious Dartmouth College in 1830 with a law degree. At this point, John found himself at a crossroads in life. If he had kept bounding along the path he had been on, he would have led a quiet, albeit successful life in law, maybe a lawyer, some kind of paralegal. Or he could go back to his Christian upbringing and become a minister, as his mother had always intended. Being swept up in the evangelical movement of Charles Finney, side note, another interesting figure in American history.
Maybe another episode.
Yeah, maybe. He decided to go with the latter, going back to school. He studied theology at Yale University. His Yale years were pretty tumultuous. He got expelled from Yale because he basically broke the consensus of Christian opinions and called himself a perfectionist, which is a very specific kind of idea in Christianity. So Oliver, as you probably know, in Christianity, everybody, every human on earth is a sinner, right?
Yeah, just like inherently, the whole point of kind of the whole point of Christianity at a certain point is like acknowledging the fact that you are inherently kind of evil, but putting in the effort to try and be good is good enough in the eyes of God. Well,
Well,
maybe not in
John,
those words, but you get what I mean.
yeah. Well, John believed that you could be free of sin in mortal life, which generally goes against what the church teaches. And most sects, there's a couple.
And
I think early Catholicism had a bit of perfectionism in it pre-Protestant movement, but
wasn't there also a
generally,
point in Catholicism's history where you like popes had some shitty popes had convinced the people that if you pay them enough money, you'll get in heaven.
yeah, that was pre-Protestant
So,
as well.
so maybe don't trust pre-Protestant Catholicism.
Yeah. So, my point is, it's a fairly fringe idea, but
Mm.
anyway, Yale is where he first played around with the idea of perfectionism, which is the idea of becoming free of sin and mortal life through religious conversion and practices. The goal of perfectionism is to find a union with God to live a sin free life. This differs from the consensus of Christian sects, which believe that humans are born with sin in their hearts and will only have perfection in the afterlife if they accept God's love. Notable sects that believe in perfectionism include Methodism, Pentecostalism, and the Quaker movement, which is still around to this day. People think it was like some, small footnote. I think Reagan was a Quaker,
I need to look into
actually.
Quakers because I've heard a lot about. I've heard Quakers a lot. I don't really know anything about them.
They're a pretty interesting lot. They have
They
some
do make
interesting
some nice
views.
oats though.
True. John proclaimed himself free of sin, which left him banned from attending Yale because perfectionism was at odds with the prevailing Calvinist ideas of the time.
Because believe it or not, a lot of Christians take offense if you just say, "Hey, I don't have any sin. I'm better than all y'all."
Yeah, he essentially pulled a Chris Chan love quest.
I don't know. I don't know if that's the word to describe it, but yeah, sure.
um, while wandering on, he formed a group of utopian idealists known as Bible communists in Putney, Vermont, who believed that true Christian love necessitated the abolition of private ownership. Another notable belief of biblical communism is a communal marriage in which the community marries one another rather than traditional monogamous marriage. These were extremely radical views for the fledgling nation, and for the most part still are today. In
What do you mean nation?
nation as in the country of the United States of
Oh,
America?
sorry.
Yeah.
Never mind.
Mm. In 1837, he wrote a letter to a fellow perfectionist named David Harrison, in which he outlined his belief in free communal love. This would serve as a foundation on which the Oneida community would be built years later. And I have an excerpt from that letter right here. I won't read all of it. It's a pretty lengthy letter. I will write all that is in my heart on one delicate subject, and you may judge for yourself whether it is expedient to show this letter to others when the will of God is done on earth, as it is in heaven. There will be no marriage. The marriage supper of the Lamb is a feast at which every dish is free to every guest. Exclusiveness, jealousy, quarreling have no place for the same reason as that which forbids the guests at a Thanksgiving dinner to claim each his separate dish. The quarrel with the rest of his rights in a holy community. There is no more reason why sexual intercourse should be restrained by law than why eating and drinking should be. And there is as little occasion for shame in the one case as in the other. God has placed a wall of partition between the male and female during the apostasy for good reasons, which will be broken down in the resurrection for equally good reasons. But woe to him who abolished the law of the apostasy before he stands in the holiness of the resurrection. The guests of the marriage supper may have each his favorite dish, each a dish of his own procuring, and that without the jealousy of exclusiveness. I call a certain woman my wife. She is yours. She is Christ's, and in him she is the bride of all saints. She is dear in the hand of a stranger, and according to my promise to her, I rejoice. My claim upon her cuts directly across the marriage covenant of this world, and God knows the end.
Reminder that all of what you just heard is a Christian writing about women and sex.
Yeah,
I feel like comparing a woman to a dinner
y-
is a bit much.
it's a very convoluted way to be like, yeah, my wife cucks me. Essentially.
Being cucked is fucking awesome, dude.
Yeah, actually being
God loves
cucked is
it.
cool and God loves it. It took a decade, but essentially he got the community of Putney where he lived to revoke traditional marriage. And this was his first how do you say that? Foyer into
Foray, yeah, I think the
yeah,
word's foray.
foyer into creating a community under his beliefs.
But
And
this isn't Oneida yet.
yeah, it's not Oneida yet. It's Putney, Vermont. In this style of marriage, all of the women were married to all of the men in the community. In this complex communal marriage, sexual interaction was allowed so long as the man kept his semen to himself in order to prevent flagrant pregnancies, as child rearing was highly controlled for selective breeding. John's first foray into gathering a flock ended with his arrest on October 26, 1847, for adultery for obvious reasons. While I cannot find the exact date of Noyes's release, he made bail and then flew to upstate New York, where he started the Oneida community. So when you make bail, that doesn't mean you're free. That means you have a court date coming up and you get to like kind of live out your life until the court date. He escaped the court date, and out of everything I read, I could not find that catching up to him. Later on, I'm kind of spoiling, but later on he gets charges brought about on him, but they have nothing to do with this arrest he escaped from, essentially. So kind of weird. I mean,
Speaking of spoiling, I just want to say, you know how I said I haven't heard about the Oneida community?
oh yeah, just wait. That comes up later.
Okay.
Under the charismatic leadership of John, which I would say after he read that letter, he has a way with words, doesn't he?
Not necessarily because as I said before, I'm a bit weirded out that he kept comparing women to, you know, a succulent dinner.
A succulent meal? A
Oh
succulent
no,
Chinese
that's me in
meal?
the modern age.
No, I would say he has a way with words. I've read this letter, a couple others I haven't really included. Some of his writings, and like, okay, the material in that letter is basically saying, yeah, my wife fucks other dudes. I don't care. God loves it, man. But the, it almost sounds convincing to me for some reason. Almost. It's just the way his syntax. He's a very educated man. The way he writes, I don't know, but I would say he's a fairly charismatic guy. So under his leadership, the community of Oneida, which was in upstate New York, flourished and grew larger than its beginnings in Putney. The newly formed community made its funds from lodging and farming until a man named Sewell Newhouse joined the community and brought a more lucrative business in the form of steel traps, which was very important of the time. On the frontier,
Because the
that's
fur trade was
yeah, the
huge.
fur trade was huge, especially in the western frontier, like um, I would say like modern day Wyoming and such. Fur trade was massive in the mid 1800s. Um,
Have I ever told you how much I fucking hate buffalo?
uh, They pivoted to the manufacture of traps, which became very profitable for the community, being known as the best in the area and one of the best steel trap companies in the United States. This acted as a basis for the industrial enterprise of silverware and other products, which would bring a lot of money into the community. Another notable industrial enterprise of the community was silk weaving. Silk weaving was very profitable, and they made very, very nice silks. They also brought in new community members that were down on their luck and needed work. The fact that the community was essentially a commune, moneyless, everybody got food, everybody got fed as long as they worked and everything like that. That
Remember, these guys used to be communists.
yeah, that was a big selling point as to why a lot of people joined.
And of course, they got roped into the whole religious angle later.
Yeah, as the community grew, the need for organization led to the creation of 48 separate departments. And I have a little excerpt right here from a bits of a book I was reading, so I'll read it now. They have 21 standing committees on finance, amusement, patent rights, location of tenant housing, arbitration, rents, baths, walks, roads and lawns, fire, heating, sanitary, education, clothing, real estate, and tenant houses, waterworks and their supplies, painting, forest, water and steam power, photographs, haircutting, arcade, and whatever a joppa is. I don't know what that is. Joppa, the
Let
last
me look
being
it
an
up real quick.
iso- the last being an isolated spot on Oneida Lake to which they go to bathe. Oh, it's like a part of the lake or something. Fish, shoot, and otherwise ruralize. Besides these, they divided the duties of administration among 48 departments: circular, publication, silk manufacturer, uh, hardware, fruit preserving, paper box, printing, dyeing, carpentry, business office, shoe shop, library, photographs, educational, science, and arts, laundry, furniture, legal, subsistence, so on and so forth. I could keep going. Basically, they set their community up, separate little like money making ventures and stuff, as well as like education and all of that. The Oneida community is known as the first case of positive eugenics on American soil, actually.
What do you mean positive?
Well, I'll get into it. Positive eugenics is the idea of prioritizing the healthier and more productive members of communities they live in. The community regulated child rearing through a committee that oversaw and chose members for ideal mating candidates. Parents were selected based on intellectual, physical, and spiritual characteristics in a process Noyes called stirpiculture. And actually, I might get into this a little bit later, but stirpiculture, the term stirpiculture actually predates eugenics, the term eugenics, which is pretty interesting to me. John had the idea that eugenics later turned into, which I
Neat.
thought fascinating. And also, positive eugenics doesn't mean like positive in the way you're thinking. There's
I
two
figured.
Yes, there's two types of eugenics. There's positive eugenics and negative eugenics. Of course, there would be a negative eugenics if there is a positive eugenics. Negative eugenics is essentially what the Nazis did, the race-based eugenics, where pe- people that were impure, they basically wanted to take out of the breeding pool. Part of how they did that was through genocide, of course, but yeah, then there's positive eugenics, and positive eugenics is essentially just allowing certain people to breed depending on their health as well as other genetics. It doesn't exactly mean positive and negative in the moral sense, because in my opinion, I'm not a proponent of eugenics. So
I think most people aren't, but
yeah, of
yeah.
course, because there's a slippery slope to that idea. But when people say positive eugenics, they do not mean in a moral sense. I just want to make that clear. I'm not okay with like
Of course
stirpiculture
you
or
aren't.
anything like that. Yeah.
I don't think you need to say this. I'm
Yeah.
sure everyone here understands.
So this will be like the first and last time anybody has ever heard of the term stirpiculture. Whoever is watching this, possibly. So I'm going to go into a bit of detail as to what stirpiculture means. The root word stirp is Latin for a line of descent or stock, and was used to describe this essentially this religious form of eugenics. In fact, the term that John coined actually predates the term eugenics, which was coined by Francis Galton in 1883. Noyes's long-term goal in this experiment was to create a generation of children who would be spiritually perfect and free of sin, while also being both physically and intellectually perfect.
Wait, isn't like a core belief of you said this before, a core belief of Christians is that the sins of your like past lives like carry over to you, like carry over when you get reincarnated, or like
Their
I forget if it's
reincarnation is
reincarnation
no,
or
no, no, no. Christians don't believe in reincarnation.
okay, no, it was the parents then that like you carry
It
the sins
wasn't
over
quite the
from.
parents. Basically, human because Adam and Eve ate the apple. They doomed they doomed humanity essentially,
Yeah.
and made it so every single human on Earth is born of sin. There is not a single human on the face of the earth that is not born of sin. That's just human nature. That's just
Which
how
is why we
humans are.
baptize babies.
Which is why we baptize babies. Yes. But
Which,
essentially,
by the way, fun fact: every baby has a reflex to hold in their breath, and like on average, babies hold in their breath longer than some adults.
oh, that's interesting. I didn't know that.
It is
Um,
neat.
but yeah, so that's where John's big disconnect from like especially mainstream Christianity at the time, um, that's the disconnect. Is he thinks he believes he's a perfect sinless person. He fully believed that. I think this is that's why I differentiate this cult from a lot of cults, and honestly, why I would go away from the term cult while talking about them. um the leader believed in what he preached. He fully believed he was a perfect being, and he wanted to create a generation of perfect beings to save the world.
So it's not
um
like most other cults where they're like the leader's straight up a grifter.
yes, yeah, and another big distinction that I'm making is so cult has a bad connotation. When you hear cult, you think Scientology, all the works. Throughout all of my research, and I don't want to I don't want to you know um make like some propaganda piece for Oneida, but I could not find a controversy. The biggest controversies were very time specific. I mean, it was a commune in 1800s United States that also practiced free love. And if you know anything about the mid to late 1800s, one of the big things about the mid to late 1800s in the United States was the big evangelical revival. So people became more pious, more sex negative. Because when the United States first started out, this is what people don't really understand, and that's fine because we don't really teach it in United States history. The Americas were essentially seen as the like place to go for debauchery. Prostitution was very common and legal. Like, and I mean like late like before the Revolutionary War. I don't mean the beginning, because in the beginning, the Americas were made by religious
Yeah, I was about to
communities,
say
essentially.
it's a little, yeah, it's a little strange to hear that, because what they do teach in history is that all of the colonists came to America to practice their religion freely.
Yeah, and that's how it started in the 1600s. As the 1700s came around, like the late 1700s, the colonies were seen as basically like sex tourist place.
Because in the
People,
same way that they came, that the like religious people came to America to escape persecution from the United Kingdoms, they also that also meant you could do a bunch of shit that was illegal there
yeah, and
in America.
yeah, like criminals would come here, people running away from British law, like stuff like that. So then a huge religious revival swept across the colonies and into like the early start of the nation, and that's where we get basically that's where people that's where that comes from, that people think that the origins of our country were super religious. That's why people think that, is because of that evangelical movement. And this happened right in that period of that huge religious movement, which later, into the early 1900s, is what contributed to alcohol being outlawed. But anyway,
Wait, are you talking about prohibition?
yeah, prohibition. That was in the early 1900s.
Right. Yeah, I guess the leader of that was religious. But anyhow, that's a different topic, right?
Yeah, yeah, it is. But it all kind of connects in one big web of American history, and that's why I think this topic is interesting and should be talked about. But anyway, where I left off, basically, the term stirpiculture that John coined, it predates the term eugenics. He wanted to create a generation of sin, of children that were free of sin, while also being both physically and intellectually perfect. For the most part, this experiment was successful in the way of controlled child rearing. This commune lasted for 30 years, and at its height it had 300 members, and they had only birthed 93 children, with only 12 of those children being on accident.
Hmm.
Which is, I mean, that's crazy. It's a community built around free love, essentially. Everybody's married to everybody. They can have sex all the time, whenever. It's not against the rules, and it's actually encouraged, but they only had 12 accidental births. That's crazy. Um, Interestingly, due to the perfectionist Bible communist doctrine, the children of Oneida were considered to belong to the entire community as a whole instead of just the mother and father who created them. Before and then during pregnancy, the child bearers were taught that the children they carried were not only their own, but they were of the community. The child they birthed would not recognize them as their one mother, but instead recognize every woman as their mother and every man as their father. They were to understand that they did not birth children for themselves, but instead for God and the collective of Oneida. John made sure to impart that collective communal love. Or wait, Oh, sorry, I misread that. John made sure to impart that collective communal love was more important than the love of a child, or a love a child had for their mother. Raising the children was not a personal household responsibility, but instead a community effort. So instead of children being raised by their parents, they were raised by a committee of caretakers, which was made up of Noyes's most loyal followers. Part of the reason John believed communal parenting was important was that he believed traditional two parent households would ruin the structure of the community's complex marriage. While I'm sure it has become rather apparent the issues with a community built around complex marriage, one of those problems lies within the children and the relationship between their biological parents. In this communal marriage, the child has to be married to their parent by default, as they have to be married to the rest of the community by default. While I have not found any evidence of sexual impropriety perpetrated against the children on a systematic level, like another cult known for free love, called the 12 Tribes, problems like that very well may have popped up due to the nature of the communal marriage system.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, it's very weird when you think about it. When you take children out of the equation, it it's more or less just 300 consenting people to a very weird predicament. But then when you put
Polycule, you mean?
yeah but a large polycule, a 300 member large polycule. You know what I'm saying?
Mm.
Um,
But no gay sex though.
yeah, I don't think they were allowed to have gay sex. Um, But when you put the children back in, it starts to get weird, right? Because like I said, parenting was a community wide thing. Children were raised with the idea that um every member a was a parent, essentially. Parenting was community wide. So then when they grow up and they're of age, um they're essentially getting married to the people that they see as their parents. Um, and I do know, I didn't write this down, but I do know it was expressly prohibited that biological parents have sexual relations with their children. That was expressly prohibited. So it's not like it was on a systematic level. Like I said, the 12 tribes, that was systematic, and there was a lot of child rape in 12 tribes because it was encouraged. It was not encouraged in Oneida, and it was expressly not allowed. People only had sex and sexual relations when they were of age, which, I mean, to be fair, or not to be fair, to be honest, of age back then was very different as to how we see of age. Of course, I'm not giving that an excuse. I'm just saying people grew up differently back then. Like, women were married off at 16 to like 40-year-olds. That's not a good thing. That's a bad thing. But they had different standards. That's just how it works. History is nasty and has a lot of problems like that.
Yeah.
But my point is, there weren't systematic things in place to harm children. It's just that the way the community is structured inherently kind of creates this bad dilemma. While John believed that traditional marriage was an affront to God and that communal marriage should be propped up with sexual interaction, he also believed in the concept called male continence. So we know what incontinence is. Incontinence means you can't control your bladder. So if you take the in out of that, basically it's the opposite of that. Um, they essentially taught men to hold in their semen. They were edgers, essentially. He implemented what?
Nothing.
What'd you say?
Nothing. Don't worry about it.
Okay. He implemented ideas such as male continence because he believed the social functionality of sex was beneficent. Sorry.
Beneficial.
Yeah, the social functionality of sex was beneficial, but he also wanted to control who could or could not rear children. Male continence was taught to young men by post-menopausal women, so women in their like 40s, 50s plus, to reduce the likelihood of pregnancy. So they essentially had a committee of cougars that would have sex with young men and teach them not to blow their load. Essentially, the idea came to John before he started the community, actually. He practiced male continence as a way to experience sexual intercourse with his wife while sparing her incredible pain and suffering over childbirth. After she experienced 4 traumatic pregnancies that led to the death of those children. Uh, Noyes believed.
That is a really obtuse excuse. Like that is a really obtuse excuse to pull out.
Yeah, after I was reading while I was reading like John's letters and reading about him, I think he was just like an autistic guy.
Really.
Well, that is like the most autistic way to go about how do I stop my wife from getting how do I stop my wife from getting pregnant? Oh, I just won't come. That's like the most autistic shit I've ever heard in my entire life. And then he made a community around men not coming. I mean,
He
am I
really was
wrong
that
here?
dedicated.
Am I really that wrong here? That's like
Honestly, to me, it just kind of sounds like an excuse. Like someone asked and he had to like make up an answer.
no, to me it sounds like a fucking like a super obsession like trains. That's what that sounds like to me.
Hey, what's your hyperfixation? I really like Gundam. Oh, what's yours? Oh, I really like Quake or whatever. Hey, what's yours? Yeah, my hyperfixation is pulling out. Having lots of sex and
Not
pulling
even
out.
pulling out, not even pulling out, not coming.
I
This is how the conversation would go. Oh, what's your hyperfixation? Not coming.
the man with the iron prostate.
um, um, anyway, so Noyes believed there were 2 types of sexual interaction. One being for the social and emotional benefits that came with sexual interaction, while the other was to serve propagative purposes. And then this is a quote from a book I found called Male Continence. It's basically
I
a
wrote a book about it.
yeah, it's a very small book. It's more like a scientific paper looking into the idea of male continence and John Noyes's relationship with male continence. So here's where it starts. That men and women should establish intelligent voluntary control over the propagative function. Is it not better, it may be asked, to leave nature to take its course, subject to general rules of legal chastity, and let children come as chance or the unknown powers may direct without putting any restraint on sexual intercourse after it is once licensed by marriage, or on the freedom of all to take out such license? If you assent to this latter view, or have any inclination toward it, I would recommend to you the study of Malthus on population. Not that I think he has pointed out anything like the true method of voluntary control over propagation, but because he has demonstrated beyond debate the absolute necessity of such control in some way, unless we consent to the and expect that the human race, like the lower animals, shall be forever kept down to its necessary limits by the ghastly agencies of war, pestilence, and famine. So that kind of like outlines part of the idea for male continence. Essentially, people that agree with this, which there are people that agree with this, very few, believe that humans are better than a- animals. They can control like when they have like sex and when they want children, and people should use that more. That's essentially what this is trying to say.
Hmm.
Anyway, I will now go over the process in which the children were separated from their biological parents. For the first year, the child was cared for by their mother. Once they were deemed ready, they'd start to be weaned off of breastfeeding, and then the community would become a more active role in the child's life. So the change between mother to community would be more natural. Then the child would be placed in the community nursery where they'd meet new caretakers for the first time, as well as other children around the same age. Because one thing that John really obsessed over was keeping generations together, just kind of as a way to like keep things kind of in place, I guess. Then, at the age
Hmm.
of 3, in order to sever the ties between mother and child, oh wait, what? I made a typo. Ignore that. Just ignore that.
Silly Billy.
Basically, at the age of 3, in order to sever the ties between mother and child, the mother would completely cease to exist in that child's life, completely. And then after a while, like a period of time, John thought it was okay for the parents to meet with the child and spend some form of time with them, just to have just enough familial bond with the parents so they don't like see themselves as strangers, which then could lead to like inadvertent sexual interaction. I mean, that's what he believed. But as I stated earlier, I think this man was severely autistic and just did not understand humans in some very like specific
Fundamental
ways. Yeah.
ways.
Anyway, all of these
Who knows?
stages,
Maybe he was just an idiot.
yeah, maybe. All of these stages were done to break the ties of a child that a child would have to their mother, because John opposed the idea he called philoprogenitiveness and believed it would break the sanctity of the communal marriage. I talked quite a bit. I didn't get into too much detail because I don't want these videos to be like super in depth like history lessons. I essentially want them to be I found a weird thing. I want to talk about it a little bit. So there
And
none of
also, you've talked about it before that you want like these to be like relatively small, like 30 to 40 minute videos.
Yeah, so while I haven't gone like super into detail about anything, I mostly just want people to see some kind of fascination in this and maybe look into it further. Um,
Also, I know you really like history.
yeah, I love history.
You are a man who is deeply fascinated with the depravity of old man.
Yeah. So while I've talked a lot about the background and practices of the Oneida community, for this last stretch, I want to discuss the lasting impact this small commune had on American history, because it had quite a bit of impact in a lot of weird ways, and I find it very interesting.
Like the spoons, because
Like the spoons, the company still exists to this day, and it makes really good fucking spoons. First of all, Oneida was very revolutionary when it came to gender roles. During the mid to late 1800s, men and women played very specific roles in society. Men went out each morning to find work in order to provide for the household, while women stayed home and served as the homemakers, which, I mean, come on, that as it should be, am I right, guys? I mean, shoot.
I don't think we should talk like that. But all right.
While these roles were very commonplace in American history and general history at large, I mean, in the 1800s, an even bigger example is Victorian England. They had even stricter gender roles as well. So while it was very commonplace in American history, they were very strict during this time period. Women could not even work for regular wages in many places across the country. So that means if a woman didn't have a husband, they were kind of screwed unless they lived in an affluent family.
Yeah, because like the whole like um, what do you call it? Give me a second. The whole like women's suffrage thing happened like 10 years after this, right?
No, this happens in Congress with the Oneida community.
Oh,
Yeah, and actually, the lead, I forget her name, but like the head of the suffragette movement actually praised John fairly openly, which is very weird. It's so weird seeing like different little characters in history kind of like interact with each other, because a lot of history, like people see different historical subjects as little bubbles unto themselves. But we live in a very reactive world where everything interacts with itself. So
and
so
also you've talked about it before, but like America back in the day, like back in the colony days, weren't like a big unified nation. They were basically just like a collection of like 20 different colonies that happened to be neighbors.
yeah, of course, but this is
So things
the
kind of spread
yeah,
like gossip and whatnot.
but this isn't the colonies anymore. This is like the mid to late 1800s. The United States was already established.
Ah, okay.
Yeah, I mean, we were already moving westward.
Then maybe
Like
cut all that out.
think of this like Victorian England, like Victorian England was happening at the same time. The Wild West, like um at the around the end of the Oneida community, the start of the Civil War happened. In fact, so yeah, this is a lot more modern than you're thinking. You're thinking more like 1700s.
Yeah.
Women could not work for regular wages in many places across the country. Oneida is an exception to this. Due to its communist societal structure, everyone in the commune was made to work for their keep, including women. Also, due to older women being tasked as teachers in male continents, that's a very nice way of saying cougars. The commune at times put women first in some ways, especially since pregnancy was held in very high regard. Women were often catered to instead of the inverse. They
Because
also
reminder, they only let like 90 people, like only like 80 to 90 people have kids, so
yeah.
they treated those people that with a lot of favoritism, I
Yeah,
suppose.
exactly. They also took women's health very seriously, which was sorely lacking in 1800s America. I mean, uh, if you look at history in general, sure, but like especially 1800s America, medical practices on women, fucking disgusting. Like genuinely disgusting. I don't even want to go like, oh, I'm male feminist or anything, but like, I mean, we would put women in loony bins just for like abdominal pain and stuff, you know.
Also, lobotomies were very popular at some point.
Lobotomies were very popular, and they were very much perpetrated against women.
And also, of course, the simple reminder that up until recently, deaths from childbirth were very common.
Yes, yeah,
Like 40% of women would die from that.
yeah. So, as I briefly talked about, John Noyes's experiment with stirpiculture directly connects to the foundation of eugenics. Stirpiculture was coined about 20 years before the term eugenics, and the United Community was the first American community that openly practiced positive eugenics. Francis Galton was directly inspired by John's stirpiculture and later secularized the idea and called it eugenics. So that's a bit of like a negative impact that Oneida had, because generally speaking, not even generally speaking, eugenics is not good. Okay, eugenics is not good. It leads to a very bad slippery slope where the Nazis, they not only like did a genocide against Jewish people and a lot of other different kinds of people. The Greeks, they hated the Greeks as well. But they also did not allow the blind and deaf to have children, amputees to have children. There's actual cases of people with Down syndrome getting put in concentration camps alongside Jews. That's a lesser known part of Nazi history. So it's a very bad slippery slope, and I would say that's a negative legacy that Oneida had. Also, this is a weirder turn, as Oliver referenced earlier on, President Garfield's assassin was briefly a member of the Oneida community.
Oh my god, can I finally talk about Charles?
You can, but I will say there were some bits that you kind of got wrong. But
Oh.
go ahead, speak your piece,
Okay, so
King.
basically, Charles came from an abusive Christian household, and this turned him into a very obnoxious person that like just could not stand people hating him.
Yeah.
And he was so fucking quick to anger. And at some point, like when he turned into an adult, like soon after, he decided to join Oneida
Hmm.
because free love and whatnot. He was looking to get some tail.
So
Or,
I will say that's where you get that wrong. It wasn't just that he was looking for tail. He actually he kind of worshipped John Noyes, the leader.
really now.
Yeah, he saw John as a leading mind, and he actually trusted him wholeheartedly. Anything John said would go in his book.
Oh,
Yeah,
well
so
that sounds like something he would do.
yeah.
But anyhow, he joined the Oneida community, and the thing is, this everybody fucking hated him. Like everyone in the commune hated him.
Mhm.
So a thing about one of the traditions you didn't like bring up. It's I don't know if there's like a name for it, but basically it's a hazing circle where like just every once in a while everyone like most everyone in the community would get into like a big like sharing circle, and then they'd like point out each other's flaws because there's perfectionism, so
Yeah.
they have to try and get like, so this is like part of that whole like trying to live like a perfect life, so they point out everyone's little itty bitty flaws. But like for most people, this was par for the course. This is just what you do. It's kind of just a formality, nothing really personal. But for Charles, yeah, everyone fucking shat on him. Nobody liked him. Like for him, it was like just everyone shat on him during
It
those
was like
like.
everybody else was picked for the other dodgeball team, and he was left alone.
No, quite the opposite. No, like everyone would like tear into him
That's
when it
what I'm
got to his
saying.
turn.
Everybody else but him was on the other dodgeball team.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyhow, and it got to the point that he had his own nickname. His name is Charles Getow. So people started calling him Charles Get Out.
Yeah.
And of course, at some point, all of this like hatred. Oh yeah, also of course, the free love thing. Yeah, nobody like, even though that like everyone's married to everybody and like just you can have sex whenever you want to. Yeah, he got none. Nobody wanted to have sex with him
Yeah.
because everybody hated him, and eventually he left after a few years because nobody liked him
Mhm.
and made it very apparent that they didn't like him. And not to go into like all the details, but sometime after that, he started like writing to the president, Charles, James Garfield, and like he had basically convinced himself that like he was the reason he got elected. And when he sent another letter talking about like demands, like you owe me a lot. Could you get me like $1 bajillion and some hookers and like a helicopter or whatever? And of course, when he didn't reply, he got absolutely
So
furious.
I'll interject again. It wasn't just that um Charles was sending Garfield letters. They kind of he worked with Garfield's campaigning team.
Did he now?
Yeah, Charles was a steadfast Republican. Actually, let me go into it. So, essentially, that kind of like how he worshipped John. He essentially, after leaving the commune, he put that into the Republican Party, that energy into the Republican Party, and not quite worshipped Garfield, but like really idolized him. Gatow saw himself as a steadfast Republican. He campaigned with Garfield and believed his help was integral to the to-be president's success. But for some reason that turned sour. I couldn't find out why, but
Yeah, he like switched like who he was supporting like last second.
he didn't quite switch who he was supporting. It more he thought Garfield was planning on demolishing the Republican parties. He had some kind of delusion that Garfield was actually a patsy, so to speak, and was in the Republican Party to essentially end it. Um, so he believed God ordered him to kill Garfield. So he didn't see this as an assassination. He saw it as removal. And then I go into detail on how I kind of go into detail, a little bit of detail on how he perpetrated the assassination. If you want me to read it.
Uh, Maybe 1 second. But basically, there's one more thing I want to say.
Okay.
When he like went to purchase a fire, like a pistol, like a revolver, like the day before,
Hmm.
he had the choice of like two. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there was like a cheaper one and there was like a real fancy one. I think he told like a gun store owner this, but he said that he picked the fancier one, and the reason he did it was because it would look better in a museum,
Yep. Yep.
and that kind of ties into the other motivation. It's very clear that part of his motivation for this whole assassination is he really wanted to go down in history
Yeah,
because
that's part of it.
he
Yeah.
he really wants people's approval, and that just kind of makes the whole assassination ironic because like no hate to Garfield fans out there, but like he's probably, for better and for worse, one of the like least noteworthy presidents in all of U.S. history.
Yeah. So I'll go a bit into detail on how Charles perpetrated the incident. On July 2nd, 1881, at the Baltimore and Pontac train station, Charles loaded his British Bulldog revolver and shot Garfield in the back twice, one bullet grazing his shoulder and the other going into his lumbar vertebrae, barely missing the spinal cord. While Garfield did not die initially, he succumbed to his battle with infections 11 weeks later.
So he didn't even get him. It's the fucking like
Yeah.
the infection
It
got
was
him.
the nasty, yeah, it was the nasty, like,
He was that shit
practices
of a
of the
shot.
time. Yeah, and I'm pretty sure Charles got killed by the police after they had a chase and he got gunned down by the police.
Because as we have just established, he's not that good in a gunfight.
Oh wait, no, no, no. I remember exactly what happened now. It just came to me. So he got chased down by the police. The police captured him, and a mob, a vicious mob, formed around them, wanting to lynch him. And they were literally screaming, "Lynch him! Lynch him! Lynch him!" Um, and he got his day in trial and got hung. So, now after that was a brief bit of the legacy of the United Community, but now we're gonna start rounding it off with the end of the United Community because it no longer exists. The company that makes silverware very much exists. It's fairly
Yeah,
profitable. It's a successful company, but it's secular now. The community itself
yeah, it's
does
not
not
really
exist.
connected to the religion anymore.
Yeah. The Oneida community lasted for 30 years when John Noyes tried to pass it off to his son Theodore. This did not last, however, because Theodore lacked in his father's dogmatic beliefs, and thus began the downfall. Um, Theo was actually he wasn't even Christian. He was a very openly agnostic person, which is kind of strange for the time. People did not like, especially back then when we were a much more of a religious country. Nowadays, if like at least like a little under half of the country is fairly secular, and most people that call themselves Christian, I don't think they actually believe in the practices, or at least don't live the practices. I've seen a lot of examples of that, and even my own life. Um, so
Because we live in a weird time where being Christian is actually niche and cool, apparently.
yeah, so like a little under half of the country is more secular. Um, but back then it was pretty noteworthy if somebody was openly um, not Christian. Anyway, not long after Theo's succession, a breakaway group spearheaded by a man named James W. Towner, so he basically went to California, and their community did not last long at all. And
Because
yeah,
his heart
it's
wasn't in it.
yeah. Well, no, the group that basically divided off and went to California, it didn't last nearly as long.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thought you meant his son did that, but never mind.
No, no, no. That was due to Theo's succession, essentially. That split off. While this
Hmm.
division occurred, John Mears, a professor at Hamilton College, campaigned against the community and actually did large scale protests against the community. On top of that, police began searching for John in an effort to charge him with statutory rape. From what I could find, now I could be completely wrong. I'm not trying to absolve him of like bad things he did. He very well might have done something bad, but from what I could find, they were trying to find anything to stick to him because of the community. Um, Things like adultery were taken very seriously back in the day. He had a charge that as I said earlier, he had a charge that he ran away from for adultery. So it seems as though they were pretty much trying to find anything. So they put a statutory rape charge on him. Um, I couldn't find any victim or anything like that of John. It is very possible that he had a victim. I just didn't find it. Um, this led John to flee to Canada. Successfully, again, he escaped charges and he lived the rest of his days out in Canada. So, while the community dissolved in 1881, their animal trap, silk weaving, and silverware company lived on. In 1912 and then 1918, the animal trap and silk weaving companies were sold off and later dissolved, leaving only the silverware company, which still exists to this day. I have a nice little sentiment at the end of all of this that I'd like to read out. All in all, the Oneida community proved to be a rather interesting and sordid piece of American history, which has largely been forgotten today. This is rather sad. This is a rather saddening idea to me. While they did not have a large, lasting impact on our society, I do believe there is something interesting to say about the community. The United States history is rife with examples of hate and cruelty, but Oneida shines as an example of tolerance during a very tumultuous period. I didn't go into detail earlier, but one of the things that Oneida was very much known for was they were staunch abolitionists. They believed that I mean, obviously, part of their beliefs was they were communists, so they didn't believe in private ownership. Period. Um, so obviously, they wouldn't believe in slavery, but they were staunchly. They thought the ownership. Of a white man owning a black man was very, very egregious and horrible. They were staunch abolitionists. And in fact, while they didn't have any Africans living in their commune, they very regularly uh, hired Africans to do specific construction work and paid them a very good wage. So not only did they talk the talk, but they walked the walk. They very commonly hired Africans. Um, So my point being with the end, um their changing of gender roles, um, giving more, like, a lot more health care to women, in a time where women's health care was essentially a joke, as well as their staunch abolitionist viewpoint. I think they were a rather tolerant group of people for the time. Now they had very weird beliefs, and they had beliefs that may have had bad outcomes.
But in
I'm not.
terms of eugenics cults, this is by far the least bad
Well,
one
I'm
you could
I'm
possibly
not.
pick.
Yeah, I'm not trying to, like, venerate these people. I'm
Yeah.
if there was bad things that happened, it happened. History is full of bad things and bad people. What I'm saying is, um essentially what I'm saying is, though, out of history, um which is bloody and horrible, they shine as people that tried to do something they believed in and had good outcomes from it. I believe.
Hmm.
Because John fully believed in uh his practices. He didn't swindle these people. Um, he allowed people to voluntarily come in. There was no, like, you couldn't there wasn't any rules about leaving. You could leave at any time. Um, like, Charles left of his own volition. I mean, people didn't like him, but he left of his own volition. He wasn't kicked out. He wasn't shunned. He left of his own volition. People left. People came and went. There was times where the community was smaller. There were times where the community was bigger. With the peak of 300 members. So that's why I've strayed away from calling it a cult. Cults have a very bad connotation for an obvious reason. We all know why. I don't have to go into detail. Um, and that's why, if you noticed, I call them a community, because that's what they were. They were a community of like-minded people, essentially.
Huh. I will say, this very positive, well, not entirely, but surprisingly positive video. Makes me feel bad about the SM poster I made because I definitely leaned really hard to that cult
No,
thing
it's
you told
funny.
me.
It's funny. It's funny.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's the video.
All right then. Y'all have a great rest of your
Bye.
day. Goodbye.
Bye. 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 Bye.